As you can see here, we've done more than 4 million euros in the last 365 days with our brand Eve Curls. Here's our meta dashboard. You can see I've spent more than 1.4 million euros in the last 12 months. And this is all done with our brand Eve Curls. This is the website. Here you can see a picture of me, literally, and of my mother and my brother, like we've started this brand together. And in this video, I'll explain you the exact meta ad strategy that brought us from 0 to over 4 million euros in revenue. But before we start, make sure to join my free school community. There's nothing like this in the space. It's basically a full-blown course, all topics covered, not just marketing, but anything else as well. All templates which we use with Eve Curls will be included in the community. We have weekly Q&As and we have a community of like-minded people. So this is basically everything you need to launch and scale your brand to 7 figures for free. And it is called Brand Elevate. The link you can find in the description. So make sure to give it a look because this is just value which no one else is giving out for free. So make sure to check it out. But with that said, let's get right into the video. So the meta ad strategy that we use is very simple. What it basically is, we're using a CBO campaign. A CBO stands for campaign budget optimization. That means that the budget is optimized on the campaign level and not on the ad set level. And what we structured as the following. We basically have one campaign per region. So one CBO per region, and you base this campaign on the language. So for example, if you're shipping to German-speaking countries, you have one campaign with all your German-speaking countries. And also you would make a separate campaign if the unit economics are very different. So let's say if you are shipping in Europe and you are shipping, for example, to Germany and Austria, but the shipping rates differ heavily. So for example, to Germany you ship for $6, but to Austria you ship for $12, which is a huge difference. So then you would also split them out in a separate campaign. But if that's not the case, just put them in one if they're similar, just to let Facebook optimize properly. So with that said, you have one campaign per region based on language, and if there's different shipping rates, you would split them out as well, or other unit economics. Why this works so well is because with this method, you don't waste money on testing as you do with ABO. You basically let Meta decide what will happen and where your budget goes, because the algorithm is much smarter than you, and it doesn't need that much data to properly understand how well an ad will perform. So instead of you forcing ad spend to a certain ad, so let's say you're forcing, I need to spend at least 3 times my AOV on this ad set, and you're forcing, 150 euros of ad spend on this ad. Meta can probably already say with a couple euros, and then it will limit itself and spend it to other better performing ads. So that's one thing, how you can just really let Meta decide and not waste a lot of money on testing. That's why this method works so well. And basically the method looks very, very simple. So it's structured as the following. So first of all, this is your campaign. And in this campaign, you have different ad sets. And each ad set is one concept with multiple variations. So what could be, you have this ad set here. So this ad set is like a specific video with like a script with a UGC creator. And then you let this UGC creator record 3 different hooks. So then you would have this ad with, for each ad, you would have 3 different hooks, but then just the same video for the rest. Or you have a certain static ad with a picture. And then the only thing that what you change, for example, is the headline. So what you want to do is, like in each ad set, you want to have one concept, basically one ad, but each ad then has one tiny difference. Like for example, most like the hook or maybe the headline or any other detail. But for videos, focus mostly on the hooks. That's what we almost always do with our brands. And then once you have done this simple setup, now it is simple. Now you need to focus on massive creative testing. Really make as many creatives as possible. And with as many as possible, I'm saying hundreds per month. So I mean hundreds of concepts per month. And that's because the more creatives you make, the bigger the chance you find a good winner. But also, please keep in mind, don't sacrifice quality. What you need to do is you need to pump out lots of quality creatives. And why is it so important? Because let's say that on average, it takes you around 10 creatives to find like a new proper winner. Well, how do you find more winners then? Just by testing more creatives. That's why we really focus on volume. Make as many quality creatives as possible. Like, have this simple campaign structure, just throw it all into Meta, let Meta decide where the budget goes, and only thing you focus on is making creatives and finding more winners. And then the question arises like, okay, so how do you look at your performance then? How do you adjust your budgets? How do you decide even what is a winner? So we'll get right into that right now. So what is first very important is that you need to set your target NCPA. NCPA stands for new customer acquisition. So that means how much you spend in order to acquire a new customer. Because what you want to do is like with your business, you want to acquire new customers as much as possible, as these customers later will become returning customers. And that is going to build like a business with true value of returning customers that keep coming back once you launch new products, or maybe your product is running out. So that is maybe a reason why they're just coming back naturally, but different reasons. But once you got them in, it's much easier to sell to them again. So what you want to focus on is how much you spend to acquire a new customer. To really like understand your performance and to know how much you need to spend, etc. You need to have your target and CPA in mind. And then how do you set your target and CPA? Well, what I would advise you to do is that you need to find a number where you maximize your profits and in absolute euros. So what I mean is that if you've spent a certain amount of money and you've made an amount of revenue, that your actual total profit which you made that day is maximized. So we're not looking at percentages like I made the most percentage in profit, but I'm talking about the total euro value. And that is a number which you want to maximize. Of course, maybe if you're very advanced and you have some subscription brand which has very high lifetime value, you might not want to look at how much profit you make today. But I'm sure for almost everyone in this video, it will be best, especially if you're beginning, to just focus on maximizing your profits today on day zero and to make as much money on day zero as well. So yeah, how do you set your target and CPA? Well, it is very simple. So first, what you need to understand is that your NCPA will increase whilst your budget increases. And this is why, because the more, in the beginning, if you only have a little amount of ad spend, your ads will reach a very warm audience. So these are people that are ready to buy your product. And so Facebook will just distribute your content to these people and they will buy. But once you increase your ad spend, Facebook will need to reach new people. And Facebook is always trying to send it to the most optimal people as possible. So the more you spend, the more people Facebook needs to reach. And that means that the colder this audience is. So the more it will cost to convert them, as you need to send, as probably the conversion rate will be lower on these people. So that's why your NCPA increases as your budget increases. And let's say you have a certain product, and with this product, your break-even point is 20 euros. So that means that at this point, you're only spending, if you're looking at this graph, you're only spending around 1K a day, and we can see that your NCPA is probably around 4 euros, so you're making nice profit. But as the more you spend, the more your NCPA will increase, and at some point you'll reach this point, and that's where your average NCPA is gonna be 20 euros. So that is your break-even point. So once you've spent this amount of euros and you've hit this NCPA of 20 euros, you just broke even and you made 0 euros in profit. This is not what you want. You want to maximize it. You want to maximize your total amount of profit which you make. And also what is important to understand is that with NCPA, I mean the following. So how do you calculate your NCPA? And that is very simple. What you need to do is just go to Meta or your total ad spend. If you're spending on Google, TikTok, just take your total ad spend and then divide it by your total amount of new customers. And how do you get these new customers? Just go to your Shopify analytics, and there you can just find how many new customers you had on a certain day. Just don't look at what it says in Meta or Google or TikTok, these over attribution numbers. What we want to look at is the actual money you've made and the actual money which went out. And that is your total ad spend, and that is your actual new customers which you've received. So that is how you calculate your NCPA. And with that said, let's get back into it. So now we have found this point where we're breaking even. This is not the NCPA which we want to hit because we're not making any profits on there. So what we can see is this graph will basically show, like with the same ad spend levels, how your total profit which you're making will look like. So this point where we broke even, that is exactly this point. As you can see, our total profit was 0. So we spent 3.2k and our total profit was 0. So basically what happens is in the beginning, you're spending like very little, but you have a very low NCPA. So that means that you're making a lot like of profit if you're looking at a percentage sign. But initially, like it's just worth it to just spend more, as probably your NCPA might not increase that much. And because of that, your total profit will be more and more and more. So this is what happens here. Like the more you spend, the more your profit will increase. This keeps continuing until some point, like as I said, you're gonna reach a colder and colder audience. Like to acquire a new customer, you'll probably need to spend more than your break-even point. So like 22 euros. So like at this point, like all the new customers which you've acquired at this level are costing you more than 20 euros. And that's why your total profit is decreasing. However, like looking at your average NCPA, it is still below, like, that's going to be like in this point, which is still below your break-even point, but that is because it takes the average. But without these new people, you probably would be better off because these new people costed more. And as you can see, the more you spend, the more expensive these people will be. And your average will go down, down, down until at some point it hits your break-even. And that's when your total profit will be 0. So what we want to do is we want to find this point basically, as this point is the point where you maximize your profits. And that's usually the case when you hit around 15 to 20% margin. So what I would advise you what to do is I would do the following. What I would do is I would make sure, understand your margin, understand your AOV, understand your cost of goods, understand your transaction fees, understand your returns, and then calculate what NCPA you need to hit. Then calculate what NCPA you need to hit in order to make a 15 to 20% profit margin. So that is something that you need to understand. So take a look at your AOV, take a look at your cost of goods, at your transaction fees and your returns, and calculate the NCPA, which will give you a 15 to 20% profit margin in the end. And then once you have that number, that is your target NCPA. And maybe over time you can change your target and see what happens to my profits. Like you can maybe decide, okay, for 2 weeks I'm gonna try to hit a higher NCPA. Does your actual profit increase or not? If yes, then okay, then change it. But for a rule of thumb, I would say aim for around 15 to 20% profit, as that will maximize your NCPA. And then, as I said, okay, so now we understand how to, like what structure you need to run your meta ads in. So that is one CBO with just a bunch of ad sets which all have different concepts, and in each concept you have different variations with like different hooks or different headlines, and the thing which you focus on is just on massive creative testing. You just keep introducing new and new ad sets into this campaign, and you just let Meta do the work. You just let them divide the budget. The only thing what you do is add new ad sets, and we're really talking about hundreds per month. And then you understand your target and CPA. And now what is important to do is okay, how do you optimize your budget? How do you manage your ad accounts? So what you need to do is every day you need to look at your blended NCPA from yesterday and your blended NCPA from the last 3 days. So what is your blended NCPA? That is what I just explained to you before. So your blended NCPA is just your total ad spend divided by your total new customers. So this is what you get from your ad platforms, and this number you get from your Shopify dashboard. And then to continue. So then there can basically be 4 scenarios. So we have scenario, and then to continue, we can basically have 4 scenarios. So as I said, you need to look at your NCPA from yesterday and your NCPA from the last 3 days, and you have your targets. So if your NCPA of yesterday was below your NCPA target, that is very good, and your NCPA from the last 3 days was also below your target, which is also very good, as you actually spent less to acquire a new customer than you allow. That means that you're in a good situation, so you can increase your budget by 10%. And what happens if your NCPA of yesterday is higher than your target? However, in the last 3 days, it was lower. Then you do nothing. And the other way around, you also do nothing. But if both are basically above, sorry, I made a spelling mistake here. But if both your NCPA from yesterday and your NCPA from the last 3 days are above your target, you decrease your budget with 10%. And with this structure, you really eliminate your emotion, because what you don't want to have is emotional media buying, that you're thinking about, oh, but yeah, like I'm almost hitting my target. Let's go. Let me just increase the budget. No, you want to have a strict process in which you can eliminate your emotion and you can just follow this structure. And you might think 10% isn't that very little. Well, like if you're at low budgets, I would say yes. Okay, maybe if your budget is 50 euros, you can just double it because it's very low. But at some point when you're reaching a couple hundred euros a day, I would just stick to this structure. Because in that way you can just have a fixed structure, and if you increase your budget 10% for every single day for 10 days in a row, your budget will be much higher than it was before. Like, it is really a compounding effect over time if your performance is good. If your performance is not good, it won't increase as fast, but that's also, you don't want to increase because your performance is not great. So that way you really limit your downside as well. So this is the very simple structure you follow. So as I said, just have a simple CBO campaign, focus on massive creative testing, and then just follow this simple structure where you check your NCPA on a daily basis from yesterday and from the last 3 days. And then you either increase it by 10%, your budget, you decrease your budget by 10%, or you do nothing. All right, so now I've just explained to you how to adjust your budget, which you just need to do by looking at your overall campaign performance. And I also said that you just want to focus on massive creative testing and launch as many ads as possible and just leave them there and let Meta do everything. However, sometimes you want to interfere. So now I'll explain you what to do with the ad set exactly. Well, first of all, what you need to understand is that ads work together, because basically you have this different funnel stages of the ads. You have your top of funnel, which is reaching new people who have never heard about your brand. And then at some point, people have seen your ads multiple times, but they haven't bought yet. And that brings them in a bottom of funnel, but this is a very, very warm audience. So these people maybe need to see like some static or some push, some discount, and that's when they will buy. So you need to understand how these ads are working together. Like, for example, you can see here our ad accounts. Like, I just took like a random time in our ad account, and you can see that our average CPA of this campaign was 18 euros. However, our top spending ad actually had a much higher CPA of almost 24 euros. But what you can see here as well is that the frequency of this ad was very, very low. It was only 1.3, which means that it's on average 28% of people see this ad 2 times. So this just shows that this ad is a very top of funnel ad, which means it is reaching a lot of new people. And then we see this second ad, and this ad has a very low cost per purchase, but this ad was just a picture showing some discount, and the frequency is also very high. So this just means that this is a very bottom of funnel ad. But this ad would never perform very well without this initial ad reaching the new audience and gathering brand awareness about your brand. So you need to understand how different ads work together and the different funnel stages, because you need to properly say if this is a bad performance or not. You need to understand that this ad is a very top of funnel ad. So if that is then slightly above your cost per purchase target, or basically above your average of the entire campaign, you know that it is okay. So as I said, like, you just don't want to touch your ad sets. However, if ads get spent but they get a very, very bad CPA, then you can turn them off. But please make sure to understand what funnel stage these are in, because, for example, this ad has you could say a bad CPA because it is higher than the average, but as you see, the frequency is very low. So we would keep this ad set on. Well, now we've turned them off because this is data from like months before. So currently, right now, live, it is off, as you can see here, but at that point in time we would have kept this ad on. But let's say the cost per result was much, much higher. It was maybe 40 euros. Then that would be, and it is spending a lot. Then we would say, okay, maybe now we interfere with Meta and we turn it off. But if that's not the case, then just let Meta do its thing. So only if ads get a lot of spend and the CPA is very bad for the specific funnel stage which they're in, then turn the ads off. So to summarize, our strategy, which brought us from 0 to more than 4 million euros in revenue, is that we have 1 CBO per region. And the only thing you do do is that you adjust your budget based on your blended NCPA. And what you should focus on is just making lots of creatives, because this is what helped us scale our brands. And as I said previously, make sure to join my free school community, because there's really nothing like this in this space. And to summarize it again, we have a full-blown course. We have all templates included. We have our own brand Eve Curls. We have weekly Q&As and a community of like-minded people. And it's basically everything you need to launch and scale your brand to 7 figures for free. So it is called Brand Elevate, and the link is in the description. So with that said, thank you for watching. Make sure to watch other videos on my channel. And if you have any suggestion, make sure to drop it in the comments and just leave a like and subscribe to my channel. And I see you in the next video.